Hey everyone, Josh Isley here, and welcome to the Spaceport. If you're curious about what has just graced your screen, I'm sorry, but it's another Star Wars YouTube channel. But if you have anything to say about that, go make your own videos. I like Star Wars. We're going to be talking about Star Wars here. If you're curious about where else you can find me under the Best Little Sites network umbrella of all sorts of nerd articles. I mainly write about Star Wars. Occasionally I go to the left or right, talk about Marvel, a little bit of Call of Duty here and there. You can also find me on TikTok under Josh Isley Spaceport, go figure, where I talk about my collection and again, some other things there, Star Wars related, but go ahead and give that a look and give those a read. If you're curious about what we're going to be talking about today, we're really going to be revisiting one of the most controversial decisions that Disney, Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy has made. And what better time to talk about that now that she's, out the door, the hubbub of Dave Filoni and, Lin-Manuel Brennan kind of taking the helm and kind of spearheading Lucasfilm. I don't know if that'd be one spearhead or two spearheads, two different spears, double-ended spear, double-bladed lightsaber. Yeah, I don't know. But, do it that, you can figure that out. But, so for the uninitiated, Lucasfilm was bought by Disney in 2012. In case you didn't know, welcome to the current world. So Lucasfilm was bought by Disney in 2012, and immediately after that, there were decisions that really gave fans cause for concern, really starting with Kathleen Kennedy herself. Now, I feel like this is out there a lot more now, but Kathleen Kennedy, she's not new to this. She's true to this. She has been around Hollywood for a long time. She's been there. She's done that. She's not inexperienced. Whether or not she was the right fit for running a studio is a different argument, but the woman knows her stuff when it comes to Hollywood. But a lot of the decisions that she made gave fans cause for concern. Namely, one of them being canceling the Clone Wars, 3D animated Clone Wars, and then ushering in Rebels. And that, Rebels was a huge success. I'm not saying it wasn't, but I remember when it happened, it was like, no Clone Wars, now we have this, I mean, there's a lot of network stuff too with Disney XD and Cartoon Network. Anyway, that was a whole other thing. But another decision that was made was shutting down LucasArts, the sort of video game arm of Lucasfilm. And if you've touched a gaming console, you've probably played a Star Wars game here and there. A few iconic ones just off the top of my head: Force Unleashed, Battlefront, KOTOR, the Jedi Knight, Jedi Academy games. There's so many Star Wars games that are just cherished. And KOTOR is personally one of my favorite corners of the galaxy, but we'll talk about that and some other time. But probably one of the most controversial decisions, if not the most, was de-canonizing the old extended universe. And the old extended universe was just this vast network, this vast web of stories from during when the movies took place, during the prequel trilogy, the original trilogy, in between, before, after, just iconic storylines and iconic characters that were truly cherished in the community. And just like that, it was gone. Books, comics, video games, just gone. And Kennedy kind of doubled down on this. What'd she say? She said, there's no source material. We don't have comic books. We don't have 800-page novels. We don't have anything other than passionate storytellers. And she said that in 2019, in the lead up to Rise of Skywalker. And, people already kind of picked a side, so to say, when it came to the Disney canon, EU canon, the Lucas canon. When the extended universe went away. And that, even though that was, a few years removed in 2019, what was that? 7 years removed from 2012 to 2019, just twisted the knife a little bit in the fan sides. And in my opinion, rightfully so. Because it was like, well, we don't have this. It's like, you did. But we're not talking about what happened. I'm going to talk about why it just might make sense to call the extended universe legends, the old EU, the old canon legends. And I have a few justifications for this. And before we jump into this, I'm not saying it was a good idea. I'm not saying they couldn't have done it better. I'm not saying it could have been done with a little bit more grace or reverence. I'm just saying this is how it makes sense to me, and why I'm okay with it. First justification, there's plenty of stuff from the EU that has kind of peaked. Not peaked like, amazing, like peak door. That kind of like peek from behind the corner. In Andor, we saw the old Lord Starkiller helmet just kind of in the background, so winking a nod. Boba Fett surviving the Sarlacc pit. We saw that in the Book of Boba Fett show, for whatever that was. And Thrawn, we have Thrawn now in canon. So I'm not saying all these things were done perfectly, but I'm saying, they're there. It's sort of like, hey, I see you, but we're also going to be putting our own twist on it. So whether that was done to, success or not, incorporating some of those elements, it's hit and miss. The other part of the justification is, this is where we got to put our thinking caps on. This is where you got to follow me on a little bit of a journey. One of the first things we have to look at is what the definition of a legend is. So I have my friend Merriam-Webster here, and he says, or she says, I think Merriam is a female's name, or maybe it's just a hyphenated last name. I'm just kidding. I know who Daniel Webster is. But legend, a story coming down from the past, especially one particularly regarded as historical, although not verifiable. We'll repeat that. Legend, a story coming down from the past, especially one popularly, not particularly, popularly regarded as historical, although not verifiable. So let's keep that definition in mind. Now, I'm not saying Star Wars is claiming to be historical. There are maybe some people out there that think it is, but I'm not going to speak for them. But it's been popularized. It's a popular thought. Even George Lucas has said it. Thinkers have said it. Critics have said it. Fans have said it. That Star Wars is a modern myth. It's a modern legend. In our world, you can definitely think of it as such, because there's always important morals, important stories, lessons learned from Star Wars that we can always take from it, like a good legend or a good myth, a good parable. What's another word for it? Fable. But it's sort of like that, and it is passed down to us. If you think about it, a lot of us, our parents grew up with it. I'm a prequel baby. I grew up with the prequel, so my parents grew up with Star Wars. They saw it in the drive-ins and in the theaters, and then they passed it down to me through just showing it to us, to my brother and I, my brothers and I as kids, and and we grew up with it. And then they took us to see it in the theaters. And like it or not, my kids are going to grow up with it. They don't know that yet. They might not like it, but guess what? They're going to grow up with it. But I don't have kids yet. But all that to say, that's the notion of it being passed on is already baked into how generational Star Wars is in our own world as a franchise, not just narratively. But let's revisit that that legend definition again. Story coming down from the past, regarded as historical, although not verifiable. One of the first things anyone sees in all but 2 Star Wars movies is that iconic blue text. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It sounds like, it sounds like it's inviting us into a fairy tale, to this fantasy, to this legend, right? So if we kind of take that into account here, and then we kind of transport ourselves into the galaxy far, far away. So let's pretend here. Anything they're talking about in Star Wars, the things that we're watching on the screen in the shows and in the movies, Luke Skywalker blowing up the Death Star, the redemption of Vader, Order 66, Rey Skywalker, anything in the movies and in the shows, to the people that are in Star Wars, it already happened. All right. And what I mean by that is, again, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, these things already happened. They happened a long time ago. So at that point, the things like Luke Skywalker blowing up the Death Star, the redemption of Vader, the fall of the Republic, things like this, they're already legends at this point. So, it doesn't take much thought to kind of extrapolate that to, well, that means then surely Revan and Bastila and Malak and the Knights of the Old Republic, that's got to be a legend to Luke Skywalker, and Anakin and Han and Leia. Like, these are legends that they might have heard of, so it makes sense to call certain aspects of the old EU a legend, because these are probably things that, in the current era that we're watching Star Wars in, that little window of time in the galaxy, these are probably tales that they've heard of, that, there's probably some boogeyman equivalent hiding under your bed, like, oh, Darth Revan's going to get you. I don't know. But, it's not, that shoe doesn't, it's not going to fit for everything in the old EU. Going back to Boba Fett and Thrawn, Disney and Lucasfilm have already kind of put their own spin on it. So we can't say that, yeah, Boba Fett escaped the Sarlacc pit and banded together the Mandalorians and became Mandalorian, helped fight alongside the Republic with the Mandalorians against the Yuuzhan Vong. Because at this point, it's probably, they can't fit that in. But there's probably some other stories from Boba Fett that are in Legends, that is a legend to the people in the Star Wars universe, like the Blood Ties comic, which, if you haven't read Blood Ties, go read it. It's one of my favorite Star Wars comics. And things about Thrawn, obviously we can't have him do what he did in the Thrawn novels because they're already operating in that time space with a different story. So it's not going to fit perfectly with everything. So maybe you can call this hope. Maybe you can call it copium. Maybe you can call me a Disney shill or a Disney bootlicker. I don't really care. The simple fact is that Disney canon, I'm sorry, it's canon. We can be adults and say, yes, this is canon. I'm not saying you can't enjoy the old EU or the Legends material. And in fact, no one's saying that, not even Disney saying that, because all of that is still accessible. And again, I'm not saying it was a good idea. I'm not saying it couldn't have been done better, but, the fact is that, legends remain meaningful because they function as legends. Like I said earlier, we can take important lessons from Star Wars. We can take, morals from Star Wars, because it can be really meaningful. And the older we get, Freddie Prinze Jr. said that you're just mad because Star Wars didn't grow up with you. I don't want Star Wars to grow up with me. I want it to stay the same, because I want to get older and see it through a new lens. I want to see new things because I'm older and have more life under my belt and see Star Wars through a different lens. But just like these like actual legends, like in our world, you know, King Arthur, all this stuff. Star Wars has been passed down to us from the past, and like that, it's cherished across generations. So in that way, Star Wars has always been a legend, retold, reimagined every time we share it. And that's kind of our duty as Star Wars fans, is to share it, not, you know, bicker about, oh, well, Rey Skywalker isn't a real Skywalker. I don't like that either, for the record, but there are people that I'm a diehard Star Wars fan, but there are some people where even I'm like, oh, okay, buddy. But yeah, kind of reining it back in, I want to tie a bow on this. To me, Star Wars Legends makes sense because Star Wars itself is a modern legend. It's a modern myth. But to the people in Star Wars, the characters that we watch, what we enjoy as fans is also probably legends to them in some way, shape, or form. And that's why I'm okay with Legends as a moniker. I'm okay with not knowing for sure Darth Revan or whatnot is canon or not, because I like him being the galactic boogeyman, you know. But by and by, I want to know what you think about this. I want to know what you think about the old EU. I want to know your favorite part of the old EU. I want to know what you think about, you know, how Disney handled the declassification of it and relegating it to Legends. I want to know where you want Star Wars to go from here under the new leadership even. And what part from Legends do you want to see cross that threshold into canon? You can give this video a like. You can give it a share. You can give me a subscribe if you feel so inclined, but you don't have to. You don't owe me a thing. We're all adults here. And if you're wondering where else you can find me on the Best Little Sites Network, which is linked in my profile, or you can find me on TikTok, Josh Isley Spaceport. And as always, may the Force be with you.